NBC 10 at Issue.
Back on NBC 10 at Issue, the gun control movement failed to get universal background checks, but advocates say they are not through trying to diminish violence. One local group leads a national summit tomorrow and Tuesday in Philadelphia. With me now is Dorothy Johnson-Speight, founder and executive director of Mothers in Charge. Been around for 10 years now, but let's go back to a painful month and day in December of 2001 when your son Khalid was murdered. Yes. College graduate, accepted into a master's program at Delaware by a young man who had a laundry list of crimes that he had committed, and he was out on bail. What kind of progress have you made in this decade in trying to make people aware of this kind of thing?
I think my organization, Mothers in Charge, has made major impact and just really getting the attention over the last 10 years, bringing this issue of gun violence to the forefront. I mean, 10 years ago, it wasn't getting the attention that we've been able to garnish and enroll people in as we have now.
You have a summit that you're beginning, a gala that's going on. What do you hope to accomplish over the next couple of days?
We're bringing folks, it's a national conference, and we're bringing people from the best minds and the experts in the field on violence prevention to the table. And we're hoping to, number one, continue to get the attention on a national level on this subject and get the support and enroll people and getting involved to make a difference across the country.
You talk about a new model that's needed for this, a model that bridges a gap between community groups and behavioral health experts.
Yeah.
What is that gap?
There's been a lot of discussion recently, as you know, about behavioral health, mental health illness, and violence, and there's definitely a correlation, a connection between the two. So the Department of Behavioral Health here in the city of Philadelphia is one of our major sponsors, and Dr. Evans, the Commissioner of the Department of Behavioral Health, will be our keynote speaker looking at the issue of violence and mental health and educating people on mental health and hoping to get them to see that they should not suffer and family members should not suffer in silence on mental health issues and challenges.
As you've worked over the last 10 years, have your opinions changed at all about the culture of violence or the culture in society that makes violence more easier to happen?
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge with our work each and every single day, that the culture of violence is so acceptable in our society, and I think that we have to educate those communities and across the country really on the impact and the cost, which is the title of our conference, the cost of violence.
You've talked in the past about wanting what you call common sense gun control. How do you define that?
Well, we're not concerned with folks who own guns responsibly. Responsible gun owners, that is not the issue with us. We're concerned about the guns that end up in the hands of people who shouldn't have them. And we really truly believe that universal background checks will do much to address the guns that end up in the hands of teenagers or people with mental health issues.
What was your reaction when this happened, and now that you've had time to think about it?
It was devastating. It was painful.
That it didn't pass.
That it didn't pass. But there's a groundswell across this country. We're not finished fighting for this, and we'll continue to do so.
You have called yourself sort of people who agree with you, the silent majority. If that's the case, why do you think the minority is winning in this?
I think there's a lot of things that contribute to that, but I don't know that they will continue to win. I think we've given far too much power to folks who oppose what is common sense gun laws, and we've got to come together and unite and show our strength and our determination on this issue.
Senator Robert Casey is proposing legislation, sponsoring legislation that would better protect witnesses, make more money available to local law enforcement people to protect witnesses, but also to make intimidating a witness a federal crime. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think the whole witness intimidation thing undermines our whole criminal justice system. I think it allows people who may want to come forward not to come forward because there's no support for them in doing so, and they oftentimes are fearful. So there needs to be dollars allocated to protect witnesses who want to give information but are afraid, and they've got to know that they're supported in doing the right thing.
You are on the street a lot, you're holding seminars and forums a lot, you're meeting with victims' families, and you meet a lot with law enforcement, whether it's the district attorney's office or the police. When you just sit down with police officers and they tell you what they want, what do they tell you that could help solve this problem?
We work very closely with the Philadelphia Police with Chief Charles Ramsey, and they want the same thing we want. We want safer communities. They want safer communities. You know, we're all in this together, and we all suffer as a result. As you know, one of our members, the mother of Moses Walker, you know, who was the mother of a police officer that was murdered not too long ago on the streets of Philadelphia. So we all want the same thing. We want safer communities. We want our families protected from violence.
And are they telling you that the things that you're trying to achieve are the things that they hope happens too?
We're working very closely with the Philadelphia Police Department, yes.
You also offer grief support services, or you have. You still offer
Yes,
those
we do.
at Enon Baptist Church?
At Enon, and that's what at our office in North Philadelphia.
And how is that working? I mean, how does that go?
I think that's very important, especially for mothers like Mothers in Charge who have experienced the death of a loved one through violence, to be able to support other family members, individuals. We do individual and group counseling for families who've lost loved ones to violence.
Dorothy, thank you very much. Good luck with the summit over the next couple of days.
Thank you.
Dorothy Johnson Speight. Ahead, another focus, the trauma of violence to a community and how to overcome it. It takes place tomorrow. That story ahead on NBC 10 at Issue. Stay tuned.
You're watching NBC 10 at Issue.
The group Mothers in Charge kicks off a two-day conference in Philadelphia this morning, marking its 10th anniversary with a national conference in Center City. It will draw experts from all over the country to talk about preventing gun violence. Mayor Michael Nutter and Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey are scheduled to attend.
WHYY News. Violence is often measured in shootings and murder rates. Gun violence in Philadelphia dropped last year, but a conference continuing through tomorrow is intended to discuss other tolls that it takes. WHYY Urban Life correspondent Elizabeth Fiedler reports.
Dorothy Johnson Speight is the founder of Mothers in Charge, the group that's hosting the Violence Prevention Conference.
We, Mothers in Charge, the members of our organization, know firsthand the emotional cost, the trauma that's associated with having to bury a son, daughter, or loved one to violence.
But Johnson Speight says there are costs we all inherit as well, from prisons to emergency rooms.
We're having Dr. Dan Taylor, who's with St. Christopher's Hospital. We're having Police Commissioner Ramsey. We're having Prison Commissioner Louis Diola. We're having many different people that are working on this issue, working to find ways to address this issue every day because the cost is tremendous.
Johnson Speight says the goal of the conference is to discuss the cost of violence and develop strategies that will make a difference. She says there will be a much-needed discussion about the connection between behavioral health and violence. I'm Elizabeth Fiedler, WHYY News.
Action News, Delaware Valley's leading news program, with Rick Williams, Sarah Blomquist, and meteorologist David Murphy.
An anti-violence organization created in Philadelphia is marking a milestone, the group's 10th anniversary.
We have some of the members, the most courageous women that I've ever had a chance to meet in my life. Wish I could have met them under different circumstances.
That's Mothers in Charge founder Dorothy Johnson Speight speaking this morning at the organization's national conference in Center City. Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey and Mayor Michael Nutter attended the conference. They discussed the cost of violence. Johnson Speight's son was murdered in 2001. His death inspired his mother's nationwide movement to spread love and peace.
A Philadelphia mother's tragedy inspired her crusade. Now the crusade is marking a milestone. Mothers in Charge started 10 years ago, offering support to families who had a loved one murdered. Well, the grassroots organization held its first national conference today in Center City. Mayor Michael Nutter and Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey were there discussing the brutal cost of violence. Dorothy Johnson Speight actually founded Mothers in Charge after the murder of her own son.
We have some of the best minds here today, but as well we have some of the members, the most courageous women that I've ever had a chance to meet in my life. Wish I could have met them under different circumstances.
Mothers in Charge has spread its mission of education and intervention to San Francisco, Kansas City, and other metro areas. The group Mothers in Charge kicks off a two-day conference in Philadelphia to tackle gun violence. The group is marking its 10th anniversary with a national conference in Center City. Experts from all across the country are in town to talk about preventing gun violence. The goal is to build a system for violence prevention. Mayor Michael Nutter and Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey both spoke at today's gathering.
Now, in high definition, CBS 3 Eyewitness News.
They live with the pain of losing their children every day, but a Philadelphia-based group is doing everything it can to prevent more mothers from losing their sons or daughters to violence. Mothers in Charge is making 10 years of working to reduce violence. Eyewitness News reporter Dre Clark shows us how they're celebrating a decade of making a difference.
Philadelphia accounts for only 12% of the state's population, but more than half of the state's murders occur right here in the city of brotherly love. The violence is senseless. The victims are young, and left to deal with the deaths, in many cases, are grieving mothers.
Just need people to get involved to make a difference and ask themselves, what have you done today to save a life?
Dorothy Johnson Spite's son was murdered in 2001 over a parking space. Shortly after his death, she started Mothers in Charge. The group's mission is to stop the violence through prevention, education, and intervention. The group, comprised of all women, is celebrating 10 years of making a difference by holding its first national conference focusing on the cost of violence.
And we have folks from all across the country that are here today to look at the cost of violence, but more importantly, to talk about solutions.
The two-day conference started this morning with a panel discussion featuring a number of experts discussing how to break the vicious cycle of violence and bridge the gap leading to peace. Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter provided opening remarks encouraging the women, many of whom have lost a son or daughter to violence, to keep fighting to make a difference.
It's unfortunate that we have to have you, but we're fortunate that we do have you. Stay strong.
Many believe at the heart of the issue is too many illegal guns on the street. And Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey says that's a discussion that the National Rifle Association has to be a part of.
I mean, we need to be able to take reasonable steps, and to say that there's no need for any gun control at all, in my opinion, is very irresponsible.
And members of Mothers in Charge say they favor tougher gun laws and more extensive background checks, saying the less illegal guns on the street, the less violence there is to deal with. Meanwhile, the national conference wraps up tomorrow night with a 10th anniversary gala and dinner. In the News Center, Dre Clark, CBS 3 Eyewitness News.
All right, Dre, thank you very much. Well, the group Mothers in Charge is now marking 10 years of working to reduce violence on the streets of Philadelphia. This all-female group celebrating 10 years of making a difference by holding its first national conference focusing on the cost of violence. It's a two-day conference that started this morning with a panel discussion. Dorothy Johnson Spite's son was killed in 2001 over a parking space.
We have folks from all across the country that are here today to look at the cost of violence, but more importantly, to talk about solutions.
Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey and Mayor Michael Nutter, who you see there, both praising the group today for their effort.